Hi, my name is Steve Dempster and welcome to my channel, which is all about helping guitarists to better understand the language of music to help prevent that nasty sense of overwhelm that can happen with all the information that's out there today. In this video, I'm going to ask the, I think, very simple question that I've never ever had a student ask me. And when I look back at it, I'm a bit stunned by that. And the question is simply this: why are chords shaped the way they're shaped? Or why are scales shaped the way they're shaped? Let's look into that coming up next. Three, four. Well, why are chords shaped the way they're shaped, and why are scales shaped the way they're shaped? It's a question I have never been asked by any student. And it's a curious question, or both of them are curious questions, basically having to do why are things the way they are on the fretboard, because as many of us know, guitarists are notorious at working their guitar skills from a memory of shape. Whether it's a scale or whether it's a chord, it doesn't make any difference. The whole notion of visually seeing that laid out on the fretboard is a very quick and it's a very appealing skill set. And we all do it, but I'm of the opinion that the conversation about the origin of these things just never seems to get explained to help guitarists understand that knowing the shapes of these things is really not sufficient in the long term. As a starting guitarist, absolutely, nothing wrong with learning some shapes, getting your fingers wet, so to speak, and jumping in and making some music. It's a very, very important, good first start. But you can't stop there. Think of it this way. There was no one who woke up on a Monday morning in a eureka moment and said, "Today I invent the D major chord, and behold, it will be this shape." That didn't happen. That day didn't happen. Nor did it happen that somebody woke up and said, "Today I am creating the minor pentatonic scale, and it looks like whatever you're going to make it look like." It didn't happen. And I have this discussion with my students quite a bit to help them understand that the shape of things is not sufficient. You have to go a little deeper if, and here's the crux of the situation, you have to go a little deeper in order for you to prevent overwhelm. You know, too much information coming at you, or even worse, information coming at you which is really good, but you can't make connections from it or to it. What you learned, a month ago doesn't seem to have any bearing on what you're learning today. And in music, really, nothing could be further from the truth. Everything you do or think about in music can have a direct connection to something else that you currently know. But there's something really missing from the student's knowledge base, or should I say it's a bit of a resistance, really. And that is simply this: to have a better sense of the notes that lie on your fretboard. Sorry, I'm making some noise here. Let me turn that down. Whoop. Right? To have that sense of not just shape, but what are the things that are making this shape up. I remember doing chemistry as a young man in university, and I really enjoyed it. And it made a lot of sense to me, as did understanding the fretboard, understanding music analysis. I do not use the word theory for reasons I'll explain perhaps in another video. But when I looked at chemical molecules, I could recognize the molecule by its shape, for sure. Everybody, I think, generally can see or remember what a water molecule looks like in chemistry. But that's not enough to know as a chemist. If you only know its shape, then you're missing out on the relationship of how that molecule reacts with other molecules. Even though shape is an important determinator in how things react, fundamentally, how things react is at a smaller level. It's at the level of the atoms that make up the molecule. And those atoms have names, and we should have them all memorized from the periodic table, and we're good. We can now understand how this reacts with that in a more intimate way without getting confused just based on shape. Same thing goes here. And no matter how much I have this discussion with people, there's a lot of resentment. There's a lot of backlash about the whole process. No, 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 I don't want to know that. Just tell me where to put my fingers and let me play whatever tune is the tune of the day. So I know I'm sounding a bit biased here. I happen to enjoy the learning process of the fretboard, figuring out what's happening there, not just putting my fingers where they need to go to create cool sounds. And I hope you will come to that place too. So that's basically what I want to hit today. So let's get this process started a little bit. If we agree that it won't hurt you to learn a little bit more about basically the musical language that we work with, and then apply that to your playing, if we agree that that's not going to harm you, then let's dig in and get some close-ups on the guitar and let's get underway. Okay, so here we are. Fretboard in hand. Remember, what we're trying to do here is sort of bust open the notion that shape is the leading feature in how the guitar fretboard works. What you need to understand is that shape is the result of something. It isn't the thing. Again, nobody woke up one day and said, "Behold, I have invented the D major chord." Well, why was it that shape? Why isn't this one D, which of course you know as a G chord? Why isn't that one D, which you may know as a bar chord form of A major? Why aren't they that? Why isn't that a D? Doesn't make any sense to me. I want to get this cleared up for you. The short answer, of course, is, and I think we all know this, that anything we're playing, D and G and A minor, or some really cool evocative sounds, they're all made up of notes. Oh my gosh, it's like a dirty word for guitarists, to know the notes. And I'm not talking about reading music from a musical manuscript. I'm just talking about note knowledge on the fretboard. We don't want to continue being note knowledge blind on the fretboard. Not a good idea. Okay, so what we're going to do here to begin the process of helping you understand note knowledge, which is not difficult. Okay, let's get started by zeroing in on the 5th string of your guitar, and let me hope that you recall the name of that string. It is a 5th string, but it also has a formal name, and that's the A string, of course. I'm sure most of you have at least a fleeting awareness of that. You may not think about it very often. Hence, when it does matter, and it will matter very shortly, your recollection of it remains vague because your mind just hasn't been exercised on the notion. So, hey, let's be real. Get the names of your open strings well under control. Don't treat it as sort of a side bit of information that you need in order to play your favorite tune. Just accept it as, if I'm going to work with chemical molecules, I got to understand the atoms that make up those molecules better. It stands to reason. So I think of chords as molecules and the notes that make them up as the atoms. And to me, it makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you do this? So we'll start with the A string. And what we're going to do here is simply go through and develop an awareness of the 7, there they are, 7 natural notes that we work with in music. I should say the 7 natural letter names that we work with in music. And that's it. There's only 7. Goodness, there's 26 in our written alphabet and our spoken alphabet, and there's only 7 that we work with in music. Couldn't get much simpler. But there is a structure to how those 7 notes are laid out, and that structure does need to be memorized and then ultimately applied over the whole fretboard so you have a deeper awareness of what's going on. Step 1. Okay, here we go. The A note is just the 5th string open. We don't need to worry about what that note looks like if you wrote it on a musical staff, but your mind needs to be able to say, yes, that's an A, because that's the name we gave it. We could have given it any other name, but we gave it the name A. There's nothing magical about that. Little trick to help you out to understand what I'm about to do. If you put your index finger on the 5th string, but behind the white nut, could be a black nut on your guitar, don't push anything, you're just holding it there. You're tricking your mind to understand that if you were to play there and there was a fret available for you to play there, and you pushed it down and played the string, you'd be making an A note. It's a bit of a trick. Because I want you to understand that to get from an A note to the next note in the alphabet, which is all we're going to do, we're going to walk through our musical alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, done. There are interval distances between these notes that are set, and we can just consider it set in stone. That's just the way it is. Don't worry about why it's that way for the time being. It's just one of those, it is the way it is, and know it for now. We'll go back in and explain the why in another session. And by the way, that's a hint at the reality that everything we do in music is layered. If you start with very fundamental ideas and build upon them, all these higher level ideas are much easier to understand if you get the middle layer or the bottom layer stuff really solid. If you don't do that stuff and get it really solid, all the other cool stuff that we could be putting on top makes no sense to you. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Okay, A. There it is. I'm playing it and I'm faking it behind the nut. Okay, A to B is 2 frets apart on the same string. 1, 2, done. That's a B note. Now there's nothing about that fret or that string or that location that says that's B. It's something that has to be memorized. Unlike tablature, of course, that just tells you right away, hey, doesn't even tell you what finger to use. Just play in the 2nd fret of the 5th string. But it's a B. So we have A, open, B, 2 frets away, and that's true anywhere on the fretboard, by the way. C is always right next door to B. When we move only 1 fret on the fretboard, the musical term generally for that is referred to as a semitone. When we move effectively 2 frets on the fretboard, that is referred to as a whole tone. So we have a whole tone, 2 frets wide, and a semitone, 1 fret wide. Okay, we've got A, B, C. You have to memorize this. Or read the PDF that I've attached to this video, which you can download later on to help you out. C to D is always 2 frets. So that's a D. You don't have to worry about why, it's just we've called it a D. Let's just not get too philosophical about it. That's a D note. If you go there often in your playing and you take a moment to say to yourself, oh yeah, that's D, eventually that connection will get made. You have to do it. D to E is also a whole tone or 2 frets. E to F, semitone, right beside each other. Very easy, very straightforward. F to G, whole tone, 2 frets. G to A, boom, 2 frets. And then I'll ask a question to many people. Where I've ended up is the point on my fretboard where there's usually two dots, either on the top of the side of the fretboard or on the face of the fretboard. There's often something that sets it apart from everything else. And often students don't even know that. Why is that happening? Again, we'll deal with it in another session, but you have reached another A note at this point. We'll follow it through. Here I go. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. That's it for the alphabet, and then it starts all over again on A. And I could continue going for as many frets as I have. I'm just going to repeat the process from here on out. A, B, C, side by side, D, E, F, G is the highest I get access to on that string. If I wanted A, it's somewhere there. No fret to push on, it's just the sound of the string. This is something that has to be memorized, but let me help you make it easy to memorize it, because it's really easy. I don't get why people are so hung up on not knowing this stuff. It takes no time at all to really get it. So, of all the notes that I played, there were two sets of notes that were only a semitone apart, and those were the B and the C and the E and the F. If only you remembered that, then by default you could recall that all the remaining notes, all the remaining consecutive notes, are a whole tone apart by default. So you don't even have to memorize the structure of it, although that's a good idea. You just have to memorize the B and C and the E and F. That's kind of how I did it when I was doing this. And then if I didn't land on those combination of notes or intervals between notes, then I said, well, if it's not B and C or E and F, then the other ones must be 2 frets apart, like C to D, or G to A, or F to G. If it wasn't one of those other 2 combinations, then I knew they were 2 frets apart. And that was it. I'm done. Now I just have to keep kind of gently recalling it as I pick up the guitar and play in my day-to-day life. That's all you have to do. Okay, so here we go. Slowly on the 5th string, going through all the natural notes laid out on that string. No sharps, no flats. If you don't know what I mean by that, again, we'll eventually get into that. No sharps, no flats, just the natural notes from the lowest A up to the other A at the 12th fret. There is a name for that, but I don't want to confuse you right now. The name for the distance between the two, but let's leave that out for the time being. Here are the notes. We have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A again. So if you sense that there's a relationship between this A and this A, if something is hitting your mind that says something's going on there, but you can't quite articulate what it is, that's a good sign. You're on the right track. If you have trouble recognizing that there's a connection between those 2 notes, don't worry, we'll try to embellish the idea again down the road so that you'll be more clear on it. But for the time being, what I want you to do is take the time over the next, let's say the next week or 2, and just really hammer out those notes. You know where they're located so well on that string that you could effectively do something like this. Just make a little tiny bit of music with it. That's it. That's all I want you to do. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Right now it's just a memorized issue. But I want to give you a little tiny hint of things to come. If you do indeed know those notes really well on that string, I want you to think about this. If B and C are a semitone apart, stands to reason if you know somewhere else on the fretboard where a B note is, and you will, then C has to be beside it. So knowing this on one string is absolutely going to help you understand it on all the strings, because it doesn't change. It's the same. That's pretty powerful. What that means is, in a very, very short period of time, you could have a working understanding of all the natural notes on your fretboard. You still have to think it through a wee bit, but you have a complete understanding of how it's laid out. And the more often that you come to that and practice it and move around and explore and enjoy that process, it's going to start to sink in. And it does it in little fragments. It's not something, you know, you do that today and you've got it forever. It's like anything. If you want to get bigger muscles, you've got to go to the gym, repeatedly to work on that muscle. The very same muscle, over and over and over and over. Well, it's no different here. If you want to get the muscle of note knowledge, not just how to play them and what frets to do it in, but recalling their names, then you need to go to the gym and flex that muscle a lot and push yourself to get good at it. I hope that makes sense. So we're just doing this on the first string, or sorry, the fifth string. And the point here is, ultimately, that once you understand the layout of the notes, then we can start to have a more intelligent discussion about why is this D chord shaped the way it is? And, yeah, even more maybe obvious is, why is it called D major in the first place? Who gave it that name and why? Did it just get made out of the blue, or is there something else going on underneath these chords that give you a sense that, yeah, there's another layer of information that I don't have access to that I'd like to have access to? It isn't because it's going to make you play better necessarily, or you know, write better music, although it tends to when you're aware of the stuff that's going on under the chords or under the scale shapes. It does tend to open up more confident capabilities because of the connections you're making to things that you previously didn't know were connected. So that's kind of where we're heading. So stage one is to get this under your fingers like you own it. Don't forget to go back the other way. In fact, it might be a better idea for you to practice from the higher point, go down, and then come up. And then go up. To help reinforce the knowledge going down, because a lot of people have trouble thinking kind of backwards as they do this, right? Because we don't think of the alphabet backwards. You don't go A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A very often in your day-to-day life. But if you're like me and you got to struggle through a phone book to figure out, if you ever use one anymore, figure out where the letters of certain people's names lie in the alphabet, I have to mentally go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay, it comes after whatever, J, and before this. I have to do all that because I'm not good at it. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. When you're smooth with that, then just make up some music with it. Always make music with what you learn. Give it some rhythm. So I hope hope that gives you a little bit of insight into starting to think about why chords are shaped the way they are and why scales are as well shaped the way they are. Of course, the answer is it will be based on the notes that make up those things. The longer we don't know this material as guitar players, the longer we stay in the dark about how music works. Yes, you can play and you can sound cool. Everything will, at the end of the day, you want to play and sound cool and have fun doing it. I get it. But at some level, you don't have the language to communicate to other musicians who potentially have this kind of training. Very often any other instrumentalist other than a guitarist. But I think it's essential. It's very interesting stuff to deal with because it explains a lot of things that might be nagging you. And when you get a lot of things explained out by a small piece of information, like note knowledge on the fretboard, the sense of overwhelm doesn't tend to overwhelm you. You understand where things are coming from, what makes the stuff, and you're not walking around knowing that you can do this, do that, play this, play that, but you don't really know what you're doing and how it works. So that's what I want to kind of avoid you falling into, that trap of thinking that the only thing that matters is just making the shapes. It's true at the beginning. There's nothing wrong with doing it all the time. There's nothing wrong with focusing on it that way. But I think you're missing out on the literacy of music if you're not paying attention to what is really under your fingers when you play. Okay, that was a lot on a very small kind of topic. If you found this video, this session to be valuable to you, go ahead and subscribe down below. There's a button there. And if you want the tablature for the, and the notes, they're all there too, for the notes that I put up on the 5th string, you can download those from the notes. I'll put a link in the notes below. And you're good to go. You're building up that knowledge. You're becoming a more informed player. It will not stop you from being the creative, open soul that you are. It'll only make you better. All right, Steve Dempster, Dempster Guitar Studio, out for now. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.